I would also like to start by thanking the Dhaka Art Summit and Diana and Amara for inviting me to speak on this platform. My paper will present a few glimpses into exhibition histories that involve East and West Pakistan narratives. First slide, please. Iftikhar Dadi's presentation yesterday from the Forensic Art History Workshop, which was part of the summit's educational program, gives a perfect segue to what I will be covering today. Can you hear me? Yeah. From 1947 to 1971, artists from East Pakistan, which is now current-day Bangladesh, developed a thriving and dynamic relationship with galleries, institutions, audiences in West Pakistan. Following a bloody independence struggle riddled with war crimes, 1971 saw the secession of East Pakistan into an independent Bangladesh, consequently ending all relationships with West Pakistan. Since then, discourse around Bangladesh and Pakistan became one-dimensional and deeply censored. Thank you. While pre-1971 era publications like the Pakistan Quarterly, which some of us saw yesterday in the workshop, and a few later academic texts do shed light on the 1947 and 71 years, the topic is treated as marginal at best in Pakistani art institutions. I received my BFA degree at the National College of Arts, which was established by the British in 1875. Despite its packed library and its staff comprising luminaries of the Pakistani art world, and its own architecture standing witness to 1971, somehow this part of history was never really engaged with in an in-depth manner in my 4 years at the country's oldest art school. Let me clarify. Members of the community are not insensitive to this history, and conversations around it are not exactly uncommon, but it is a history contested there and treated through selective amnesia, a dialogue that can be seen reflected in the art education. In the public sphere, too, much of the mutually shared ecology of the art that was fostered between the two nations for over 2 decades seems to have been forgotten, and one is hard-pressed to find books, catalogues, and essays about a shared history in this 24-year time period. In tracing the transnational development of modern art in the global south, it is imperative to acknowledge that South Asian modernism cannot be fully understood without taking into account a more thorough examination of the joint modernist movements and the supporting ecosystems between the two wings of Pakistan before 1971. Because these histories are fraught with political and cultural violence and separately published content largely in Urdu and Bengali, making material accessible to each side that doesn't speak the other's language, it is not an easy task. A better understanding of the 1947 to 1971 years can help identify historical developments in the art of the region and analyze the effects of cross-national exchange and representation. Next slide. My paper looks at one such channel which allowed an exchange of artwork and ideas during those 24 years, that of the Contemporary Art Galleries Rawalpindi, the first independent art gallery in Pakistan, which was founded in 1961, 14 years after the independence from British colonial rule. Pioneer modernist artist Zubeida Agha was appointed director, but she also played the role of researcher, curator, manager, and accountant. The gallery helped create a platform for artists across East and West Pakistan, exhibiting works both nationally and internationally, connecting to varied audiences and encouraging a sort of cross-pollination in an attempt to work together as one nation. From the time of its opening till its closing 16 years later in 1977, upon Agha's resignation, the gallery put up a staggering number of shows. Some estimates put this at well over 200 exhibitions. Today, very little documentation or literature exists on the programming and impact of the gallery, or the knowledge that much of the gallery's collection was donated to the National Art Gallery, which is Pakistan's first art museum, and an initiative that had Agha on its founding body. Slide, please. Due to Agha's reclusive nature following the gallery's closure, her life remained on the peripheries of the male-dominated art and literature circles of the country. She kept to her studio painting in solitude and opened her house to public only to host exhibitions. She passed away 20 years later in 1997, and many of her contributions as a gallerist and patron remain undocumented or unexamined in depth. While there is literature on her role as an artist, and case in point being Iftikhar Dadi's book Modernism and the Art of Muslim South Asia, there is little to no academic literature available on the gallery and its programming, other than an acknowledgement of its existence and supporting press material. In early 2016, I began work on a research project on Agha, which was supported by the Lahore Biennale Foundation and overseen by Asia Art Archive and Dadi. The task was to sift through archival materials still surviving at Agha's residence. The project scope was only for digitizing selective research material on Agha, progress for which is still underway, but it opened up many more channels of inquiry for me. With access to a number of primary research documents, I was able to get a glimpse into the development of East-West Pakistan art networks through the lens of the gallery she established and its programming. Through this presentation, I seek to introduce the history of the gallery and its engagement with artists from Bangladesh, as well as shed some light on state involvement in art world of the early years. Slide, please. In the archival material obtained, one of the first documents I sorted were of the first fine art societies of Pakistan, but from West Pakistan to be precise. The first exhibition organized by the Karachi Fine Art Society was in September 1948. Works from East Pakistan included 15 paintings by Zain al-Abidin, of which only 2 were for sale. Next slide. Abidin is considered one of the most important modernist masters of Bangladesh, having a prolific body of work spread over nearly 4 decades and recognized for establishing the Dhaka Art Institute. We know that Abidin was enlisted by the government of Pakistan in the Cultural Administration Department and was asked to facilitate cultural development in East Pakistan. Hence, his relationship with the West was very active and public, and he was an active participant in West Pakistani exhibitions. This increased level of engagement might be one of the reasons that Zain al-Abidin is one of the few Bangladeshi artists that are very well known in Pakistan, but always in his capacity of his artworks and always in broad introductory notes. His working relationship with West Pakistan is never really discussed. What work did he show? Who were his patrons? How did he perform in his role as a cultural ambassador? These are some of the questions that come to mind. Next slide. This 1955 catalogue of his solo exhibition at the Art Council Lahore was found in the Agha archives. Next slide. Inside, in what I believe is her writing, one can observe quickly drafted notes of sales made and interest shown. We can see interest by Mr. Wilson from the Ford Foundation, or that from a certain Kawaschi, a well-recognized Parsi family in Pakistan. Was Agha facilitating sales for the Arts Council? From materials collected from the archive, I learned that Agha was closely involved with the formation of the various fine art societies, either in the capacity of a board member, officer, or a participant. She was a founding member of the Arts Council Karachi, which explains why she had this catalogue, and perhaps why she was connecting to patrons for Abidin. These slide notes also leave room for one to track where many of the artworks, Abidin's and others, went. Once Agha set up the gallery in Rawalpindi in 1961, she started working from a room-turned office space and hand-wrote or typed scores of letters to artists all across East and West Pakistan. In a spectacular response, she almost immediately started receiving artworks from all over in the mail. Next slide. In the surviving gallery documents, there are several portfolio images as well as hand-typed bios of artists, including those from East Pakistan. Many notes, I believe, were written in collaboration with her brother, Agha Abdul Hamid, who was in the bureaucratic service, a board member of the Fine Art Societies, and also a well-known art writer and critic. The archives include numerous pages of CV-like bios, and sometimes small notes like this slide on Mohammad Kibriya, who is referred to as a young painter and noted to be studying in Japan. These, I believe, were drafted shortly before or during the time that she was setting up the Contemporary Art Gallery and were compiled for a show that the government of Pakistan was putting up at the Centro Culturale San Fedele in Milan, Italy. This exhibition was an invitation of the Cultural Center and the Italian government and was to bring together works by the top Pakistani painters of the time and supported by a photography exhibition and a film. Complete letter and cable correspondence exists in the Agha archives, which starts with invitation by the Cultural Center's representative, Mr. Springhetti. A back and forth ensues between him and Mr. Jalaluddin Ahmed of Pakistan Arts Council, Karachi. A number of people are drawn in, including the well-known leftist poet activist Faiz Ahmed Faiz, who was then the secretary of the Arts Council Lahore, and Zain al-Abidin, who was then the principal of the Art Institute, Dhaka. While records show that Faiz was asked to travel, it seems that Agha was chosen, in her role as an executive committee member of the Arts Council Pakistan, to put together and coordinate this show, and then travel to Milan with it, both as a representative but also, as the Italian brief requested, as a person who could deliver talks on the exhibition. A letter from Springhetti to Jalaluddin dated September 9, 1960 said he was unable to visit Dhaka for some visa issues and hence unable to meet the artists. He pressed that Ahmed ensure the inclusion of artists from East Pakistan. Slide. From January 25th to March 15, 1961, the exhibition was installed under the title Mostra di Pittura Pakistania Contemporanea, the exhibition of contemporary Pakistani painting, at the Galleria San Fedele. Records show that the exhibition included 55 artworks, out of which 15 were from Karachi, 21 from Lahore, and 19 from Dhaka. Works from Dhaka were by Anwarul Haq, Aminul Islam, Abdul Basit, Mohammad Kibriya, Abdul Razak, Qayyum Chaudhry, Rashid Chaudhry, and Safiuddin Ahmed. Perhaps most intriguing is that in his correspondence from December 4, 1960, Springhetti had written saying that he would push for the exhibition to travel and that he was speaking to the director of the Galleria Giordano in Lugano, Switzerland. He also mentioned bringing the same up with the fine art authorities in Venice, or, as he added, asking the ambassador if he'd prefer Rome instead. I could not find records of the exhibition traveling, but it would not be entirely impossible to trace what happened next. Next slide. In 1962, in its first year of programming, the Contemporary Art Gallery opened an exhibition largely showcasing East Pakistani artists. The commercial exhibition included close to 45 works by 13 artists, and the selection was put together by Zainul Abidin. And this date would have been called curated by Zainul Abidin. This record is only made possible through a found press clipping from the Pakistan Times dated March 29, 1962. Attended by the Ministry for Railway and Communication, FM Khan, the article included certain trope quotes about tradition and identity, which were also discussed yesterday in the forensic history workshop. Quote, "The minister said that he was deeply impressed by the profound sense of belonging to soil, which some of the East Pakistani artists have always exhibited and maintained in their works." End quote. Next slide. Another catalogue in Agha's archive is this national exhibition of paintings 1964 to 65 held at the Pakistani Arts Council, Dhaka. The list inside gives a very clear glimpse of the artists that were showing across East and West Pakistan. Agha spoke about showing her work here in a press interview soon after. This is the only instance I have logged of her exhibiting in Dhaka, though this is in no way a result of an exhaustive search. Next slide. By 1969, Agha was heavily involved with the Committee for the National Art Gallery, Islamabad. This was to become the first institutional gallery of the country and was to house a permanent arts collection, which I mentioned earlier comprised of a sizable donation from Agha. According to one press interview, she donated close to 35 works of contemporary paintings, which were either privately acquired or gifted by the artists. Unfortunately, the construction of the National Art Gallery was delayed heavily for many years, and it only opened in 2007, 10 years after she passed away. Apart from being a member of the board of directors of the Society of Contemporary Art Rawalpindi, Agha was a member of the board of governors of the Pakistan National Council of Arts, and a member and board of governors of the National College of Arts, Lahore, and a member of the Central Board of Film Censors. It is quite possible her role in interacting with East Pakistan encompassed film and photography as well, but that is left for future examination. Next slide. To bring the presentation to a close, I wanted to share these two images. I came across this catalog from 1973 in Agha's archives. I don't know if the text is very legible. No, please go back. It seems very emblematic of how much things changed after 1971. The publication seems to accompany a comprehensive national exhibition listing the top painters across the country and was shown in Islamabad and then, as the foreword says, traveled to other countries. Of course, with East Pakistan now an independent country, all the familiar and recurring names are absent. The challenges of nation and institution building in newly developed countries are always complex. Next slide. But for anyone familiar with the lives, beliefs, and ideologies of Faiz and Agha, their presence on the selection committee is bittersweet. This preliminary material forms the first steps in my research, hopefully leading to further inquiries into how East and West contacts were developed in West Pakistan, and later mirrored in other galleries, arts councils, publications, and the art centers of Lahore and Karachi. Next slide. In the end, I leave you with this quote by Zubeida Agha from 1988 that perhaps sums up the discourse of those heady early years. Thank you.